It's time for the Kim Hammer Show, where you'll learn how your state government affects you, your family, and community. Here's Kim Hammer.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to the Kim Hammer Show. This is Kim Hammer, your host, state senator here in the state of Arkansas, and I'm glad that you're joining me today. We'll be here till 1 o'clock. If you're a faithful listener, you realize that for the last several weeks have not been on the air. That's due to Ouachita Tiger football, and they had a great run this year, so congratulations to them. I would like to also give a shout out to the Bryant Hornets, who are going to play next week in Little Rock at War Memorial, and also give a shout out to the Benton Panthers. They're going to be playing at War Memorial next weekend also, competing for the state championship. So to all the teams that'll be there next weekend, we congratulate you for making it that far, and we look forward to a great weekend of football next week. Hope that you've had a great Thanksgiving holiday, or that you're having a great Thanksgiving holiday. Perhaps you've got all the turkey gone by now, and the ham and the dressing and all the other things that you were blessed to get this past week. We are blessed to live in the nation that we live in and to enjoy the things that we do, living in this free nation that we do. And one of those things is to be able to come together each year and celebrate Thanksgiving. Unfortunately, sometimes there are those that would like to just remove Thanksgiving from the scenery altogether. When you go back and you look at the historical value and you look at the historical beginning of Thanksgiving, you find that there was a strong presence of God, an expression of appreciation for the fall harvest and for the crops that had come in. And it was their way of gathering together along with their neighbors and just taking a time to celebrate the Thanksgiving of a good crop harvest. In fact, one time the settlers were nearly wiped out, and the next year they had a bountiful year, and from there it began to be a state-by-state issue until finally it was recognized as a national holiday. And so we just want to pause and give thanks for all the blessings that we have and to thank God for the blessings that we have. One of the blessings we got today is it's nearly 71 degrees, and the wind is blowing rather briskly right now with the chance of thunderstorms this afternoon. So I encourage you just to take note of the weather, especially if you're out hunting. Duck season has started. Deer season is still going on. I think there was over 140,000 deer that have been harvested thus far. And so we just want to say to all the hunters that are out there to enjoy themselves, but also to be careful. I want to give you a sneak preview as to some of the things that are going to be going on coming down the line now that we are able to be back on a regular basis from week to week. In the next few weeks between now and the end of the month, the end of December, we're going to have the Secretary of State's office in. They're going to talk about the new voting machines and the electronics behind that and how it has improved. It's going to improve the ability to secure the vote and make sure everybody has a chance to vote, but also to protect your vote when you cast it. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking also about some of the things that are going to be on the ballot next year as far as some of the initiatives. We're also going to have, I've got a couple guests coming in that are professional licensed practice counselors. We're going to have them come in, and we're going to talk about the mental condition of the nation today and the world and society. We're going to put a Christian perspective on it. And so in a few weeks, we'll have them come in, and they'll be on the show one day. And then we're going to have Kermit and Cindy from the Crime Lab are going to come in, and we're going to talk about the importance of the Crime Lab. And with the Crime Lab opening up in Northwest Arkansas, we now have two, and talk about the improvement to the turnaround of cases and just have an enlightening conversation about the Crime Lab. And then we'll also have some candidates because, you know, the primary is going to be early this time around. It'll be held in March, and so we'll be having candidates to come on to the program. You'll get a chance to talk to them and ask them your questions, and we'll put them on record as far as where they stand so that you can make an educated vote when it comes next March. One of the things also want to do is just kind of highlight some of the things that are going to be going on at the Capitol next week. We'll start back with several meetings next week, and one of the meetings that'll come the week after next is going to be the public health meeting. But next week, there will be a group that's coming in from Arizona. It's called the PACE Foundation. And what the PACE Foundation does, or one of the things that they do, is that they support the startup of clinics that are designed to treat children and adults who have been diagnosed with a disease called PANS or PANDAS. As a result of some legislation that was able to get passed this last time around, we will now have a clinic that is going to be a joint partnership between UAMS and Children's Hospital. And what it will do, and in fact, this past week, they've already received their first patient, but as a result of a working partnership with the grants that are coming down from the PACE Foundation, they will now be able to begin to treat children and adults for the disease of PAN and PANDAS. The working relationship between UAMS and Children's, this will be only one of 4 clinics right now in the nation. There's one in Wisconsin, there's one in Arizona, there's one I think at UCLA. We will be the only one, we will be the closest one from the East Coast coming this way, and they're going to be in town next week to meet, have some meetings in order to have discussion about that, and so that'll be good. And in case you don't know what PANS or PANDAS is, you may want to go take a look at it, because if you have a child that all of a sudden it's just like they triggered and there's no reasonable explanation for their change in behavior, you may want to check out and have your physician look at them for the disease of PANS or PANDAS, because that's typically, it's related to strep throat, and whenever it is that they don't get diagnosed early enough or they're misdiagnosed as having strep throat, as a result of that, that's what triggers it. And so if you have a child, grandchild, you know of somebody, you're a teacher, you're a counselor, and you're wondering why it is that all of a sudden little Johnny is behaving differently just like overnight, that may be one thing that you want to have checked out. But we'll have a public health meeting in a couple weeks. In fact, starting next week, we'll be back on our regular schedule. We will have ALC, which is Arkansas Legislative Council. That's the group that meets during the time when we're not in regular session, and discuss the business at hand, take care of the decisions that have to be made. There'll be an Agricultural and Forestry Economic Development Committee that's going to take place here in Little Rock next Thursday. Then also we'll have just the regular public health, the Education Committee, Public Transportation Committee, and then Youth and Aging will be meeting as well. All this coming up in the next few weeks. Audit will always meet, and we'll come back and talk about that when we get those audit reports back. One of the things we want to do, and we're going to be joined by Robert Steinbuch here in just a little bit. He's going to come by the studio. But one of the things I wanted to make for the topic of discussion today is the matter of just being able to defend what you believe when it is that you know that what you believe is correct. And with everything going on in the world today, especially with the controversy and some of the attitudes that exist with regards to the way people handle differences of opinion, sometimes it can result in some extreme controversial situations. It can even result in some physical. And it seems like today that people have a hard time just being able to come to common ground and discuss what the issues are without it becoming so confrontational. And there's a word that's used out there called apologetics. And apologetics is designed for a person to be able to express their reasons for believing what they do on the basis of truth and on the basis of being able to defend it from a position where truth is at the core of the discussion. Now, to kind of lay the background just a little bit, and we'll tie this in when Robert gets in here, we're going to talk about it a little bit, so I want to kind of lay the groundwork for some discussions we'll have in a few minutes. But everybody believes something about everything. There is no such thing as not believing anything or taking a position where you just say, well, I don't have an opinion about that. Well, you have an opinion about it. You just maybe don't want to express it. And one of the things that I think personally that we're experiencing in society today is the ability for people to express their differences without going into attack mode. Everybody believes something about everything. Let me just kind of give you a biblical principle, and as many of you know, I pastor a church, and so I'm going to give you some biblical perspective on things from time to time, because I do think that the Bible is a good book to go for a source of truth if you want to build your life on principles that are able to be sustained. Book of Romans chapter 1 and verse 20 says, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse." One way to interpret that scripture and to look at that is to be able to say that that we are without excuse whenever it is that we choose to say that we don't believe in anything. Everybody believes something about everything. Another point is this: your ability to defend is partly based on your knowledge of the subject matter. If you don't have a good knowledge, if you don't have a good depth on the subject matter, it's going to be hard for you to defend. I think that's why it makes it so important to be able to be educated in as much as you can about the various topics that are going on today. Now, everybody doesn't know everything about everything, but yet you should at least be somewhat proficient to where if you, especially as a conservative, are called upon to give an answer for what you believe, that you can defend it because at least you have a depth of knowledge to be able to go back to the core values that define what conservatism is. So when you take a look at the newspaper or you take a look at other, areas that you might want to read upon, one of the things that we need to be able to do is to have the ability to defend as far as having a knowledge base on the subject matter that we're going to talk about. Third thing is, once you've identified the truth, you have a decision to make. You'll either conform to that truth or you're going to condone it. You're going to condone what is not the truth, and you're going to do it by your word, and you're going to do it by your deed. So regardless of whether you could choose to stay silent about something, but yet through your actions, you're going to communicate a message about what you think or what you believe on a particular topic or on a particular item of discussion. And sometimes silence is the worst action that you can take. When you look at what's going on around the world and take, for example, in Hong Kong and all the activity this past week, there are individuals that are fighting for their freedom. They want a new form of government. They want to have their independence. They want to be able to express themselves freely without fear of persecution. Everything that we should hold near and dear to our hearts here in America, that's what they're wanting to do there. And that doesn't come without a price, as we've seen in the past week, as they've begun to crack down on the protesters and those that are, soliciting for their freedom. But when you take a look at those individuals that are willing to do that, and you look at individuals throughout history that have been willing to take such bold positions, I'm reminded of the individual that stood in front of the tank, if you would, or you think about people that are willing to put themselves in harm's way in order to fight even to the point of death for a freedom that is important to all of us. Once you've identified the truth, you have a decision to make. You will either change your life to conform to what the truth says, or you will, by your word and deed, go in opposite direction. Another thing is, if you don't believe in something, you'll fall for anything. Now, I went back and researched that statement because I know that's a famous line out of a country western song, but actually that song is borrowed, and if you go and Google it, you go and do some research on it, you'll find that there are several that are attributed to making that statement. Who said it is one thing, but what it says is more important. That if you don't believe in something, if you don't find a belief system, and I would encourage that it would be on the basis of truth and not necessarily on hype, not necessarily on emotions, and certainly not on something that's not going to stand the test of time. That if you don't believe in something, then you're going to be easily persuaded, and to quote a scripture, you'll be tossed to and fro by every wind that blows. As I was driving in, I was watching, and the storms moved in from the south, and you could begin to feel the effects of the wind, and a strong wind will blow away what may be important to you if you're not anchored down. So it is with an individual that if you don't believe in something, then as a result of that, you're going to be easily influenced and you will be swayed, and possibly you'll be swayed in the wrong direction. We're going to take a break at this time. You come back, we'll have some more discussion about being able to defend what you believe.
Open enrollment is upon us. Many will be looking for new health plans. Pat Davis is your health plan man. He's saving his clients 30 to 50% and more on their premiums. Don't miss this. His new plans actually pay you to go to the doctor. You heard that right. Insurance companies rob people of huge premiums and fake claims constantly. But if you stay healthy, the insurance company usually won't have to pay large claims. Brilliant. When was the last time you were paid to go see a doctor? If you have group insurance through work, are self-employed, have Obamacare, Obamacare, or about any other plan, you need to go to yourhealthplanman.com. You have nothing to lose but a few minutes, and you can let Pat find the right plan for you. You may have heard him on the Dave Ellswick Show on our sister station 101.1 FM The Answer. Pat has saved many thousands of dollars on their health premiums. See if he can help you too. Yourhealthplanman.com, or call or text him at 501-605-6935. He is local in Cabot. 501-605-6935.
The next Dave Ellswick classic movie is one of the most loved Christmas movies of all time.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas.
1954's White Christmas, starring Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, and Rosemary Clooney. White Christmas shows one time only Tuesday, December 10th at 7 p.m. at the Riverdale 10 VIP Cinema. A successful song and dance team become romantically involved with a sister act and team up to save the failing Vermont Inn of their former commanding officer. Get your tickets now at Riverdale10.com. Get into the Christmas spirit with White Christmas, Tuesday, December 10th from Dave Ellswick, 101.1 FM The Answer, and Riverdale 10.
We wouldn't be any good as generals. You weren't any good as privates.
Have you purchased an annuity? Did you know you could be losing thousands of dollars in hidden fees and expenses every year? You know, there are ways that could help you keep this money in your pocket. There's a new generation of annuities that could eliminate these unnecessary fees, pay you far more income, and protect you from stock market downturns. Learn how you could immediately improve your annuity with a free analysis from David Lucas Financial in North Little Rock. To get your free analysis, call 501-222-3368. What if you could eliminate unnecessary fees, earn far more income, and lower your risk? Call 501-222-3368. That's 501-222-3368.
Annuities are backed by the claims paying ability of the insurance company. Advisory services offered through David Lucas Financial, a registered investment advisor.
Welcome back to the Kim Hammer Show. If you're just joining us, what we are talking about is it okay for you to defend what you believe? And in other words, in a preacher word, apologetics. The ability for you to be able to take up a stand for what you believe, and is it okay, and what are some of the issues surrounded by that? Everybody believes something about everything. There's not anybody that gets off the hook as far as just taking a pass as far as particular situations that come along. And by their silence, sometimes that is their answer, but yet is an answer nonetheless. Now, let me just ask you a few questions. Why are you afraid to defend what you believe in? Why would you be afraid to believe or to defend what you believe in? I believe that some of the reasons why people are afraid to take a stand or to stand up for what they believe in is, we talked about a minute ago, maybe they don't have the depth of knowledge that they feel that they can stand up and articulate with somebody else what it is that they believe, and they feel threatened or insecure that if somebody else is able to express themselves more clearly, then that is going to be a tool of intimidation that's going to be used against them. And perhaps it is that you just don't know exactly what you believe, or you're not as convicted about what you need to believe. You know that you believe something, but yet you haven't removed yourself from it, so that whenever it is that you're in discussion with somebody about it, it's not so much that you're arguing to defend yourself and who you are as a person, as much as it is that you are arguing to defend the principle that is at stake. And how do you feel when you don't defend what you believe? I find that sometimes that's what people struggle with more, is that when they're in a situation, whether it's in a social event, and I remember this past weekend, or this past week before we came into the Thanksgiving holiday, that one of the talk shows was about how are you going to be able to go to grandma's or wherever it is that you're going to go, and you know that you're going to go into a bed of liberalism and be able to defend your conservative values without blowing the house up. And sometimes people just try to avoid the subject matter because they don't like confrontation. But the reality is you can't get through a day without there being confrontation. So the question is, how do you feel when you know that you've been given an opportunity to stand up for something that you believe in, but then you choose to remain silent? Sometimes the way you end up feeling is worse than what you would have experienced, even if it would have been a verbally confrontational situation. If you'd went ahead and got into the discussion with somebody or defended what you believe as a conservative, And that would feel not necessarily better, but at least you would walk away with some sense of self-worth that you stood up for what you believed in. When you look at the individuals that I mentioned over there in Hong Kong and how they stood up, yes, they were put in an awkward situation, but yet they felt convicted enough about what they were doing that they were willing to run the risk instead of deal with the guilt of remaining silent. And do we defend what we believe by our words, or do our actions play a part? Referenced that a while ago. Our actions should also reflect what we believe so that we are not just individuals who talk about it, but we are actually individuals who do something about it. As a legislator, I'm expected that in my votes, that it represents the constituency that has elected me to come up here to Little Rock and to serve them. And when you have, in the case of the Senate, 34 other senators, we may not always believe the same thing. We may not always vote the same way. But our people that we answer to are those that send us here to Little Rock in order to be able to vote as they would want us to vote. Now, I represent a conservative base, and so my vote should reflect those that have sent me here that are of conservative values and principles. And if I just sit on the sideline and do nothing, I've not done them justice, but worse than that, I also have to walk away feeling as though I've not only let them down, but I've let myself down. We got Robert Steinbuch that has just stepped into the audience, and I want to go back to something while we're transitioning into the bottom of the hour for our break. I guess part of what got me thinking about it is what happened this past week over in Hong Kong. And for those of you that have been faithful listeners since the beginning of the show, you remember back at the very beginning when I started doing the Kim Hammer Show, I started reading a list of the things that are a reflection of the communist goals. And it goes back, and I know it predated 1963, but this was the one that went back to the most, or went back the furthest. And when you look at the list of the things that the communist, and I'm going to use the word, Robert, Socialist Party,
sure,
would want to try to do in order to bring our nation down, and you look at the long list, some of the things that were on the list was to do away with loyal oaths, or to continue to give Russia access to the U.S. Patent Office. Now we're dealing with China that's stealing our properties, intellectual properties.
That's right.
In fact, they arrested somebody at the airport this last week that was trying to go back to China with some of our intellectual properties. Capture one or both of the political parties in the United States. Use technical decisions of the court to weaken basic American institutions by claiming their activities violate the civil rights. That's a big one that's going on today.
Yeah, exactly. In Hong Kong, you know, when I texted you earlier today suggesting I might be able to swing by, it's because we haven't spoken in a while, and I wanted to have a conversation with you and your audience about the fact that we as conservatives need to stick up for our values. And I heard you talking about that as I was driving by, in fact. We need to stick up for our values, and we have, and we're doing it in Hong Kong. And of course, this is a reflection of the fact that while the president is willing to deal with the world as it is, in other words, he's not wearing rose-colored glasses. The Chinese aren't our friends. The Russians aren't our friends. The Saudis aren't our friends. But we need to deal with all of those countries in different ways. And so we try to negotiate, for example, with China a trade deal because we are engaged in significant trade with them. But that's not going to stop us and the president from signing a law, as he did recently, that says we are not supportive and we will sanction China for what it's doing in its anti-democratic efforts in Hong Kong.
And that kind of goes along the lines with what we're talking about as far as defending what you believe. That's one thing the president is willing to do is he does have a core set of values. Now, he's not perfect, and everybody knows he's not perfect.
That's right.
We know he's got baggage, nothing that I think he deserves to be impeached for, certainly not based on the evidence of what's been presented so far. But one thing that you can draw strength as far as the way that he is leading is he doesn't care if it hair lips China. He's going to do what's right, and he's taking a stand for his values. If that could, in a way, become contagious across, and I'm going to say the Conservative Party, okay? If that could become contagious across the Republican Party, across the Conservative Party, or those that have conservative leanings, then just think how much greater we could do to push that back in. We're going to go to a break. This is the Kim Hammer Show. This is Kim Hammer, your host. I've had Robert Steinbuch stop by. You want to call in after? 823-0965, 823-0965.
Saving for retirement is a great start, but remember, it's what you do with that money that really matters. How do you get the most out of your Social Security benefits? When should you withdraw money from your IRA or 401k? And how could you pay fewer taxes in retirement? Learn how you could make the most out of every dollar you've saved for retirement. Don't miss the David Lucas Show this Saturday at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. right here on 101.1 The Answer.
Arkansas Medical Staffing attracts and retains the most professional, skilled personnel by offering excellent pay, benefits, and a wonderful adventure in healthcare.
I'm an LPN, and I've worked with Sonia for more than 8 years. Arkansas Medical Staffing is a great company and a great place to work.
Arkansas Medical Staffing wants to thank you for the great opportunity to provide our communities, our cities, and our state with the best nursing staff Arkansas can offer from an agency. They strive to execute the will to be the compass of the supplemental health care staffing. Their objective is to keep Arkansas nurses right here at home, taking care of our family and friends. Nurses, you know it's not a pretty job, but it is the most rewarding. You are the heartbeat of healthcare. And if you'd like to join the Arkansas Medical Staffing team, or you need professional caring nurses, call them today, 501-224-1010. That's 501-224-1010. Arkansas Medical Staffing, caring professionals by your side, 501-224-1010.
Hey, it's Dave Ellswick. You know, cost is the biggest reason most of you don't check into private and Christian schools for your kids. And we want to change that. We've got partnerships with schools all over the area that's offering half price, that's right, half price, 50% off their tuition. See the complete list of schools at dealsforlittlerock.com. For more information, call Lynn at 501-404-6545.
101.1 FM, The Answer, loves giving away prizes. But hey, like everything else in life, there are some rules. So first, we want everyone to have a chance. So you can only win once every 30 days. Second, we're going to broadcast your name and or voice on the air and probably put it on the internet. Third, if something changes with your prize, we'll substitute it at an equal value. See, that's not bad. All the specifics are at 1011fmtheanswer.com. Hey, thanks for listening and get ready to win on 101.1 FM, The Answer.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Join me weekdays for This Morning, America's First News. Hear the stories you'll be talking about and searching for all day as we go beyond the headlines and above the chatter with your first look at breaking news, money, Washington politics, technology, entertainment, entrepreneurship, and sports. We explain why stories matter. That's why we are referred to as the most important and relevant radio program. Join us weekdays for This Morning, America's First News.
Hey, welcome back to the Kim Hammer Show. Glad to have you joining us on this Saturday afternoon. Glad to have Robert Steinbuch walked in and joined me. We're talking about how you defend what you believe. And along that subject line, also how to do it in a right way, in a proper manner. We were reading down the list of some of the things that, if the communists wanted to come in, and I'm going to use socialist all in the same sentence.
There are different points on the same spectrum.
They're just different ways to say it. But one of the things that it talked about was, and along that line, I was in I haven't got back into discussion with her. I made a a comment on Facebook this morning regarding where police officer went into Starbucks and when he got his cup of coffee back, the employee had written the word pig on it.
I saw that.
Okay,
Yeah.
which is off limits to me.
Well,
Okay.
it's inappropriate, and you go in for a service, and then you get insulted. You're not coming back in for the service again.
But is it that employee's freedom of speech right? You and I have worked together on freedom
That's
of
right,
speech
that's
issues
right.
and everything, and how is it over the line that they would be able to put that back and not
by
be
the way,
protected?
yeah, you had proposed a bill. Having discussions with you offline, I understand that you intend to introduce another version of it in the next session on freedom of speech for government employees. But the first element in that bill that you proposed was time, place, and manner restrictions by the employer. Now, of course, Starbucks is not subject to the First Amendment in any event because it's a private employer, but we like to believe that private employers recognize the notion of free speech, but nobody thinks, including the strongest free speech advocates, of which I am one, that employers can't make reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on their employees, even if those employers are government employers and therefore subject to the First Amendment. So nobody thinks that I can stand up in the middle of my classroom, take a break from teaching, and decide to give my opinion on a local state Senate race. That's not within, the school can say you can't do that. But what the school can't do, and by the way, the school has been very good over the last several years, UALR, that is, about adopting policies that recognize employees' rights to speech. So I must credit UALR for their pro-free speech approach. And that's the administration, the central administration at UALR, or UA Little Rock, I should say. We've slightly rebranded, and it's a good rebranding. So your bill would have no problem restricting, and indeed would perfectly allow for such restrictions if that employee worked in the government. And of course, in Starbucks, there is no guaranteed right of free speech, although, like I say, we'd like to believe that they would at least recognize some of that. So it's entirely off limits. It's entirely wrong. And by the way, I don't care what the politics are. Let's say the person wrote pig, which happened to the cop, or what would be, so that's an anti-conservative. So what would be an anti-liberal? Someone comes in who's a member of one of these pro-choice groups, and someone wrote on the cup, baby killer. Right? Neither is appropriate because that's in the employment environment, and employers can restrict and should restrict that kind of speech in the time and place at the employment setting.
Which, little housekeeping, the opinions expressed today on the radio show are yours and yours alone.
Yes,
not
thank you.
a reflection. So just for the public there. But when you think about what happened in Starbucks, it's not the first time that it's happened.
No.
Nor is it the first time that happens in several institutions. And when you're dealing with people, you can't always control them.
That's right.
But over a period of time, you've got to question, you at least have the question come into your mind, how allowable is this that they don't understand that you cannot do that without there being severe consequences?
That's right.
Because it's not the first time that's happened.
That's right.
So then you begin to look at the organization and you look at the leadership of the organization, regardless of whoever it is, and it's kind of like, Chick-fil-A. Okay, right. Chick-fil-A is not perfect, but everybody knows that they are a God-fearing company, okay, along with some others. You go to work there knowing what's coming down from the top, and if you are not going to be in agreement with that, you live in the fear of knowing that if you do something like what happened, with the Starbucks and the comment, that you're going to be immediately terminated. I guess the question is, what is it that allows an individual to think that they could get away with that in the first place, that the company or the institution or the church or whatever the organization is, that they would even think about doing that?
Sure. And I think there are two things in the case of Starbucks. One is you got to blame the person somewhat. The person sounds like a bit of an arse. But the second thing is Howard Schultz, the president or CEO, whatever the position is, of Starbucks. He's hired by the shareholders to run Starbucks, but he's decided to also use it as a leftist political platform. And he has, on many occasions, done so. So he conveys this leftist ideology to his employees, and now you see a reaction by a leftist employee, leftist anti-police employee. And it's just bad behavior.
Okay, when you look at the list I've got here about the socialist goals and objectives, number 24 is eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free speech and free press. How does that play into what you see going on as far as the socialist movement involving companies that are big money companies? And that's what we're coming down to is a few people, few companies are controlling the money, and they're using it as a means to feed the socialist machine and moving on down the line.
Well, there's a number of issues. I'll touch on that last one first, and that is, it's really interesting that people like Howard Schultz, who's an employee, right? He works for the shareholders of Starbucks, hired by the board of Starbucks. He may likely own some shares, probably given to him as a function of being the CEO, but it's not that he's the owner. He didn't start Starbucks. He was hired well after Starbucks was started and well after it went public. And so he nonetheless uses the company to pursue his own personal political agenda. And this is a problem that we see with large public companies, which is they are supposed to be representing the interest of the shareholders, and yet often they are hijacked by management who want to use that vast wealth for their own personal preferences. And it's somewhat ironic if you think about it, where someone is pursuing leftist ideology under the heading and under the auspices of a purely capitalistic company. There's few companies more capitalistic than Starbucks. Remember, of course, Kim, Starbucks sells coffee for $5 a cup.
Minimum.
Right, $5 a cup. I'm not saying I don't go there. I like their coffee. But $5 a cup, I remember when you could go to a diner and get a coffee for less than $1. So Starbucks transformed the model to basically sell rich people coffee. Poor people aren't buying coffee at Starbucks. And then they look down their nose on conservatives who support the free market. It's really remarkable.
Well, number 37 on the list is infiltrate and gain control of big business.
There you go.
And
there you go.
You see the movement across there. Okay, back to the subject at hand, though.
Yes, sir.
Which is, it's okay for us to have these kind of conversations,
Of course.
which I remember in a previous presidential administration, there was a move to try to limit conservative talk show hosts and, what's going on here today, in that they realized that this is a medium, if you would, this is an avenue in which the message can get out to counter some of the things that are being put out on the major news network.
That's right.
As far as, not being accurate reporting, or kind of like in the New York Times or Washington Post this morning, one of the others, where it was written as a news article, but it was more
It's
an
opinion
editorial.
piece. It's an opinion piece. Absolutely. Look, Kim, you highlight a very important problem, and we see it in academia across the country, and that is there's no dispute that academia, as it stands today, is overwhelmingly leftist. Not kind of leftist, not like Minnesota leftist, right, which is somewhat more leftist than it is conservative, or even New York leftist, which is more leftist overall as a state than it is conservative. It is we're talking 99 and then something % leftist. And so when conservative voices speak, the leftists use, based on what you're, consistent with what you're describing, they use a tactic to shut up the conservatives, in addition to their sheer numbers. They say, oh, well, you can't say, those things are toxic. You can't make those comments. They're toxic comments. And they downright bully people. There was a colleague of mine who works in Massachusetts, who I know well, and he was invited to a debate on affirmative action, and he was asked to take the anti-affirmative action position, which is consistent with his conservative views. And after he did it, Students attacked him. Faculty jumped on that. Well, the students don't like what you're saying. Hey, guess what? Here's a piece of news. Liking or not liking what I'm saying is not a legitimate objection. And the left has routinely used personal attacks to object to conservative thought.
Well, and if you looked at what happened to the First Lady Trump this past week, or week before last when she went in the Baltimore school, I think it was, the reaction that they got, or even when the president showed up at the Washington Nationals, baseball game. But in the school environment where First Lady Trump went into, and those were, I would still call them kids, they were like middle school or in that group.
That's right.
Their actions had to be a learned action that they got at home.
Or at school.
Or at school, which, listen, I'm okay with public schools. I think we've got good public schools.
I agree.
I think we've got great teachers.
I agree.
That's not the discussion.
But we need to be cautious that even in that context, it's an overwhelmingly leftist environment and conservative views are shunned.
Which is why we need to give those that are serving in the public school roles or the higher institutions greater coverage so that if they choose to defend what they believe, they at least know that they've got the letter of the law behind them.
That was another one of your bills. And there was a case in the newspaper just yesterday that was a follow-on of this story where a woman down in Texas wrote on her personal Facebook page. That's what I mean by private. You can read it. Anyone can read it. And she wrote comments to the president saying that she was concerned about the level of illegal immigrants in her school. Now, they accused her of making other untoward statements that have been somewhat discredited. But those comments alone gave rise to the desire by the school to fire that employee for making private Facebook comments. And Trent Gardner opposed your bill and barked at me when I brought up not that incident, but a similar type of incident. And the fact is that we need greater protection for public employees on their off time who are making simple comments on their Facebook and other social media consistent with their conservative values, given the overwhelming leftist attitude of most administrations. And I must comment and commend again, I told you, at UALR, I've seen some very positive pro-free speech movements.
Well, if we can keep the pressure on, hopefully that'll continue. And we're going to take a break in just a second. But part of the challenge is keeping what we've got, making more room for what we want, and warding off those that are coming in from both coastlines now into the Central America part here.
That's right.
And trying to use that influence to do things. Leave you with this thought. We'll come back after the break and pick it up. But number 17 on the list was get control of schools, use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda.
That's right.
Soften the curriculum.
That's right.
Okay. And get control of the teachers. Then another one that was on there was support any socialist movement to give centralized control over any part of the culture, education, social agendas, welfare programs, mental health clinics, etc.
Indeed.
We'll pick up when we come back after the break.
God bless us, everyone.
What's the biggest blessing you can imagine this Christmas season? How about having your mortgage or rent paid? For 2020, it's possible when you enter the Christmas Mortgage Miracle Sweepstakes. You can even enter once a day to increase your opportunities to win. See rules and conditions for details.
To our Merry Christmas. God bless us.
God bless us.
Enter the Christmas Mortgage Miracle Sweepstakes. Go to 1011fmtheanswer.com and enter to win the Christmas Mortgage Miracle Sweepstakes.
A stock market that's breaking record after record, potential rising interest rates, and how can any of us forget the $20 trillion in national debt? Hey, it's David Lucas. What does all this mean to you and your investments, and how do you protect everything you've worked so hard for, while at the same time making the most out of every nickel you've saved for retirement? We'll reveal the answer to these questions and much more on The David Lucas Show this Saturday at 10 a.m.
on 101.1 FM, The Answer.
Let's face it, we love Alexa, and we love to let her find your favorite radio station. This one, of course. We love it, too, when she finds us. But she could find us easier if we taught her a simple skill. To get started, simply say, Alexa, enable the Answer Little Rock skill. After she confirms, you can then say, Alexa, play The Answer Little Rock, and Alexa will learn how to find us. You can listen to us through your Amazon Echo, Echo Show, Echo Dot, and Amazon Tap devices. Alexa, what is your favorite radio station?
That's easy. 101.1 FM, The Answer.
The three most important words in retirement are income, income, and income. Your ability to generate income will totally dictate your lifestyle in retirement. Hey, it's David Lucas. With interest rates at record lows and a stock market riding at all-time highs, generating income in retirement today is more challenging than ever before. Discover strategies of how other people just like you are successfully generating income in retirement today on The David Lucas Show this Saturday at 10 a.m.
on 101.1 FM, The Answer.
An Arkansas talk legend, Dave Ellswick, on 101.1 FM, The Answer.
On the next Dave Ellswick Show, well, it's a long holiday. It's a Thanksgiving holiday. I hope your Thanksgiving is just fantastic. I'll talk with you again on our Monday show, and Elizabeth will be here. Robert Steinbuch will be here on the Dave Ellswick Show.
The Dave Ellswick Show, 101.1 FM, The Answer. Do you use our station's mobile app?
A remarkable invention.
If so, we'd appreciate you taking our short survey to let us know what you think. Your feedback will help us develop an even better mobile app. Plus, you'll be entered to win a $1,000 gift card. That's right, a $1,000 gift card.
In no time at all, you'll be rolling in money.
So download our mobile app now, take the survey, and you just might win a $1,000 gift card. 101.1 FM, The Answer.
Hey, welcome back to the Kim Hammer Show. This is Kim Hammer, your host for the afternoon. We're coming into the last segment. Glad to have Robert Steinbuch, who's here on his own personal time, just dropping by. Does all the comments that he makes does not reflect who he works for. These are his own personal comments alone. So we're talking about it's okay for you to defend what you believe and some ideas that go along with that. Talking about, when you get into some difficult conversations about difficult things, kind of like what we're talking about now, but throw a couple different things in there. For example, the red flag law and the controversy of that.
Right.
And trying, people are trying to find the balance between being strong Second Amendment defenders.
That's right.
But also understanding that people can do evil things with a gun. However, what I find interesting too is like yesterday, what happened on the London Bridge.
That's right. That's right. And no innocent, civilian had a gun, because in Britain, the gun rights are not like they are here. And so they literally went after him with a fire extinguisher and a big old, tusk that somebody had. I mean, literally like an elephant tusk. I don't know how it got there. And they sort of beat this guy down. And then finally the cops showed up and were able, and they now apparently carry guns. For years they didn't. But it's really an issue.
I may be wrong on this. I think there's like a specialized force of them that carry.
That might be it. The general beat cop may not still carry, and then they have the specialized force.
Which I don't understand that if you're wearing a uniform, you're automatically a target. But
that's right.
That's another conversation. But so we're trying to. Then of course you got the people that use their vehicles.
Sure.
There's all sorts of data out there that show that people are killed by other means more so than by guns. But yet every time we have a session, the subject matter comes up about red flag laws, and there's some groups out there that are organizing, to try to push some of that. But the one thing that I find that's absent from the conversation isn't so much the taking of the gun, although that's a debate within itself.
Sure.
But as far as due process,
that's the key
for how the gun can be returned.
That's right. That's the key.
So
due process on how it can be taken and how it can be returned, both ends. And of course, part of the difficulty with the conversation is that it's not as if there haven't been always means to take away guns from people. If the police say someone is a danger and they seek to commit that individual, that's not new law, that's old law. That's what we do. We have always done. We've always had the ability to go to court, to have a judge declare someone I don't know the technical terms, but let's just say temporarily insane or insane. And in doing so, you get to remove the person and you get to remove guns and all sorts of other things, whatever the court deems appropriate. So those types of reactions have already existed in the law. So I actually think part of the debate is misdirected in thinking that there's never anything to do. But the key is you need to ensure due process on the front end and, like you point out, due process on the back end for the return of the gun if the person is cleared from, say, that claim of insanity.
Well, and I don't think there's anybody, whether you're a socialist or whether you're a conservative, that doesn't want a police officer to be able to intervene if you see a person that is of threat.
Of course.
And you want them to get control of that situation.
That's right.
As soon as possible.
That's right.
And eliminate the threat.
That's
and
right.
then we'll sort out the other things later.
Exactly.
So that part of but where the fear comes in is, and when you look at the list on the socialist agendas that we've been reading, and you see a lot of this is come to fruition. It's
That's right.
It's here. It's
That's right.
in the middle of us. People automatically jump to a conclusion that they're going to come take my guns away. As you mentioned, it's already written into the law that if a police officer sees that a person is a threat to themselves or to others,
That's
they
right.
have the ability to take it.
That's right.
In order to establish due process so that once that gun is taken, I think what's missing in the law now is there's not a defined time frame of which, or there's some gray area as far as how does that due process work.
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of them. There's a lot of gray area. Absolutely.
Right. So if you take my gun, what's the process
What's
for me
next?
to get it back?
That's right.
And the argument of, okay, if you're going to take my gun, is there a perceived threat or is it an immediate threat? And
That's
by
right.
what actions are you displaying that officer needs to take that
That's
firearm
right.
range from
Under
you?
existing law, to take away someone's rights, be it to put them into an institution, to otherwise restrict them, there needs to be an immediacy to the danger. And this is a big fear by conservatives, correctly, that the left doesn't seem to want to reflect that at all. Well, Johnny's been acting odd lately, so we want to take away his guns. Wait, what? So there needs to be something immediate and material about this, but I believe that in many respects, not entirely, folks on the left just want to use these types of laws, amongst many, to take away gun rights. You heard Beto and other Democratic presidential contenders say quite clearly, we're coming to take your guns away. By the way, they want to buy them back. Buy them back? I didn't buy them from them. What do you mean buy them back?
Well, and some of what throws a twist into the discussion is you've got like the 16-year-old boy who, a few weeks ago out there in California, seemed like a straight-up kid, no indication anything was going wrong, made the gun.
Oh, is that right? I didn't hear that.
So when you have somebody like that you have no indications that anything is wrong,
right?
It's going to be hard to have any law in the book that's going to protect against that.
Well, you can't stop everything. That's the first thing. You can't stop everything. The second thing that people, there's so many gun deaths, that the majority of gun deaths are suicide. Those are tragic, each and every one of them. But preventing a suicide is an entirely different conversation than preventing murder. Because one, the former is dealing with mental health, and the latter often is not. It could be, but it often is not. It's often malice. But the conversation never gets to that point, right? Because those who are anti-gun say, well, look at the number of gun deaths we have, which is roughly the number, by the way, of car deaths that we have. But they don't seem to make a similar claim because they recognize the usefulness of cars and they don't recognize the usefulness of guns, including amongst many other things, that there are many cases in which lives are saved when people have guns.
So bring it back to where we started
Yes,
the show
sir.
off today, or where it started off, and that is it's okay for you to defend what you believe.
That's right.
These kind of conversations like we're having today are the kind of conversations you need to be able to have around the water fountain. You need to be able to have at work. You need to be able to have it at church or school or wherever it may be, on the baseball field, whatever. But if you don't know how to defend what you believe, then you're never going to speak up or take a defense for what you believe. And I think that's part of what we're dealing with today, is that as a conservative movement, we need to be able to stand up for what we believe and be able to articulate why we believe and give good, sound reasoning. Now, in the minds of some people, Robert, I don't hold out a lot of hope, because some people already have their mind made up and
That's
they've
right.
already gone over the cliff, and they're not going to come back to a solid way of thinking about things. But I appreciate you being in the studio today, and for
Thank you.
everybody that's
God
out
bless.
there listening, hope you've had a great Thanksgiving holiday. Tomorrow's church. Don't forget to pick out your church, and you need to go spend a little time thanking God for the blessings that we have, and so much that we have to be thankful for. One of the things, Robert, I saw on the list was that the communists or that the socialists would want to do is to eliminate any phrase of religious expression, as far as
Oh, they hate
expressing
religion. They
Thanks.
hate religion.
That's right.
Because it's a higher order. It's a higher dictate.
It's something that you have to surrender yourself to in order to be balanced with the truth. This is Kim Hammer, The Kim Hammer Show. We shouldn't have any further interruptions for the next 8 months, so I hope you come back every Saturday. As I mentioned a while ago, we're going to have a long list of good guests. Thank you for joining The Kim Hammer Show this afternoon. Have a great day.
101.1 FM, The Answer. KDXE FM, Kamak Village, Little Rock. A Salem Media Group station. 101.1 FM, The Answer.